On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
Let's transition a little bit and talk more about your role as the coordinator and overseeing a large group of staff and athletes and interacting with other coordinators and front office and things like that. You mentioned earlier, obviously, you're not traveling as much with teams. So when you're in your mind, like what makes a strength and conditioning coach successful? And then maybe specifically for you, like what traits are you looking for in a potential hire?
Yeah, I like to see a work ethic. I love seeing coaches, bust their ass, get in early and stay late, but not just to be there early and be late, but are you working on your craft to be a better coach? Are you trying stuff in the weight room that might be better for your players? And I want to see really everybody fail at some point because I think adversity is beautiful. And how do we face it? Do we welcome it? And do we view it as an opportunity for us to get better, whatever better is at that point in time?
Yeah, I really like that, especially the failing aspect. My first year in rookie ball with the Pirates, I was in extended, and our coordinator would send us off with responsibilities and just watch us. And he already knew where we were going to fail. And sometimes we would surprise him and we would not fail, but most of the time, it would be something as simple as like, "Hey, did you remember a stopwatch?" And like, "No, I didn't." Like, "How are you going to run conditioning without your stopwatch?" Like, always have your stopwatch on you. Like now, literally, I never not have I go to the grocery store sometimes and there's a stopwatch in my pocket, right? Like, but those lessons, especially early on in your career in baseball, I don't want to say it gets harder to learn the older you get, but some people do tend to get stuck in their ways, or they're like, "Oh, I've seen this happen, so we can't try that." You know what I mean? But when you're fresh, like if you're open-minded coming in as a new hire and you're willing to work, like for me, that's enough to make you into something great or to help you become something great if you really want it. Um, and so that's good, man. I really think, do you have kind of situations where you're putting maybe like controlled failure at the forefront, or is it more kind of an organic, like, hey, this is just a learning opportunity, like let's sit in the office and talk about it?
Yeah, we do it right away. As soon as we bring coaches in, it's, hey, you're leading a stretch. You're working with guys in the weight room. It's we want you to get your hands-on coaching experience because that's the best way to learn. We can watch video, we can watch film, we can read stuff, we can listen to stuff, but getting that hands-on experience and getting the skin in the game of watching and working closely with players as they move and as they train, I think that's the best way to start building that.
Yeah, and you can kind of tell right from the jump, like if you throw somebody a dynamic warm up and they jump in and they're like, "If I fail, I fail," like who cares? And like I said earlier, like ultimately, if you're running a dynamic warm up, the point is to get them warmed up. So a lot of times it's like young coaches will overthink certain things, at least from my experience, right? Like they'll go out and be like, "Do I have to hit this exercise or that exercise?" And then at the end of it, it's like, "Did you get them warmed up? Yes or no?" "Yes, they're warmed up." "Okay, step one, check the box, you won. Now let's talk about the stretch. Like your presence wasn't as good, or your voice wasn't as loud, or your situational awareness, or you went overtime and we had to cut into batting practice." Like those are those next level things. But I love that you're putting people into the fire, man, because again, like there is a window where maybe observation is good, but at the end of the day, like at some point you got to just step up to the plate and like take a swing. And sometimes you hit it out of the park and sometimes swing and miss, but either way, it's a learning opportunity.
Especially when we're working camps, we're working spring training. That's when all of us are together to help each other. Because once we go to our affiliates, it's just us and our team. So how am I setting up the weight room? Does the flow work well? When I'm coaching a player, when I'm observing, when I'm supervising, am I in a position where I can see the entire weight room, or am I only dialed in on an iPad or one player doing his lift? How am I utilizing the entire facility to my advantage to be able to coach as many guys as I can in a given situation?
Yeah, and being able to sit down and evaluate and be open to that and be honest. To be quite frank, I had an eval today with our director here, and we kind of talked through some things, and the thing was like, listen, this is only one observation. I have seen you coaching, your groups from afar. Like, this is my first time sitting down and watching you. Like, this is what I saw today. This is what I think you can do better. And I have my own feedback of like, well, usually we do this, but today's session we had to mix this up because of that. um this is good feedback, thank you. Personally, I really need to work on this. Like, that's really all it is, man. It's just putting the ego aside, being open to some criticism and some feedback, and then also the person providing the feedback being open to listening to what you have to say, right? Because my director could have easily been like, no, this is the way we do it. Like, you should have done this. Like, I don't want to hear your explanation, as opposed to, during a usual session, do you do this, or is this kind of always your flow? Like, what was different today versus the other day? We're doing some sprint testing today. So like, the session looks a little different than if we weren't doing that. And, just having that dialogue back and forth and having that kind of open door to be able to connect that way, I think goes so far in just like creating growth for yourself.
And it's good for others to give that direction, to give that advice too. It doesn't always have to come from a director, a coordinator, a major league strength coach. It can be an A-ball strength coach talking to another coach of what they see, and chopping it up, and talking through different situations that occurred during a day and may occur during an affiliate, to better each other in that given moment and for the future.
Yeah, honestly, I couldn't agree more, man. I've taken a lot of the interns under my wing here, and it's interesting just to talk to them and see like what questions they have after a session. And there are things that I won't think twice about, and they'll be like, hey, I'm really curious about this. And I'm like, oh man, like, I kind of just breezed over that because that's just, standard like practice for me. But thank you for bringing that up, because then that gives me a lens into the eyes of a younger, staff member. And a lot of the staff members are very similar age to the player. So like, if the staff member is seeing it from a certain lens, the players of that similar age are also probably seeing it. And like, I'm not saying we're old, but also we've been around for a little bit now, where like, you bring somebody new in and they're like, hey, have you seen this, or did you notice this, or what was the purpose of this? And it just kind of helps you to like recreate those things in your mind, learn from them, teach them, but also like to see it, like I said, through the lens of younger athletes, because they are a different generation than we were when we were that age, and we were a different generation than our parents when they were that age. So it's just good to get a fresh set of eyes from anybody. And like I said, honestly, for me, I've taken a lot from our interns just because they're younger and they're like teaching me lingo and things like that, and how to connect with people of that age. That if I just keep talking to the older people that have been around a long time that are in my circle, like, it's going to be a blind spot for me.
Dude, I hope I'm not old. I'm only 34, and hopefully there's a long career ahead of me. But yeah, I agree with everything you said there.
It's more of a state of mind, right? Like, we've just been in a long time, so we've seen some things. Like, baseball will do that to you, I think. Like, 1 year in baseball is like 5 years of actual living. So let's kind of go on with this a little bit more in terms of being the coordinator. Like, how often do you get to visit the affiliates? How often do you get to check in with your coaches? Because like you said, once you go to an affiliate, it's a little harder to learn and to grow. Like, how are you kind of combating that as being, the boss of the group?
Each affiliate is different. Each coach is different. So for example, this year we have a new strength coach to the organization at our low A affiliate in San Jose. So my first trip out there is to, one, make sure he's comfortable and set up for the season, for his first time on the road with his affiliate on his own. Making sure players are dialed in with their prep routine, their training. They know where to go for the information, even though they may not know exactly what is on their workout sheet. at least they know where it is and are comfortable going to the coach and asking questions. Our coaches working well with their trainers, with their pitching coach, hitting coach, manager. Is there good time management amongst them to get everything done with their team? Now, when I go into a spot like Sacramento with our AAA, our team in Eric Wood, I try to be his assistant strength coach there. It's his affiliate, it's his team. He's been working with guys day in and day out. What can I do to make his job easier when I'm there during that time, and make sure our players, especially those guys that they're 40-man, they're veteran players, they could be called up at any moment there, that they're dialed in and they're ready to go.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think that makes a lot of sense for helping everybody kind of maximize the situation they're in, right? Like Eric being in AAA, he's been around for quite a while. Like, your new coach in the lower levels may not know what he doesn't know. He may not see things a certain way, where, Eric's probably seen a lot. Like we said, you're in baseball for a while, you see a lot of things. And just being there maybe as a sounding board for him, or bouncing ideas, especially, in AAA, you got guys bouncing up and down. In the big leagues, like, it's a little different than when players are transferring at the lower levels. Like, obviously you want to take care of those transfers down below, but the details and everything with those transfers just mean a little bit more between AAA and the big leagues. And so I think that makes a lot of sense, man. It's just kind of meeting people where they're at, and then just kind of helping them however you can. I think honestly is probably how I would do it if I were in your shoes. And I'm sure your staff probably appreciates that from you as well.
And it's evolved over time too. When I first started, I thought I knew what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing as a coordinator. So it was going in and trying to figure out what's best for all of us to do the job well. And so, yeah, it's evolved over time.
Do you have any advice for coaches, again, whether to make them more hireable if they're trying to get into baseball, or somebody like yourself or Eric who's been around that just wants to stay on top of things? Like, what advice do you have for others?
So when we're going through our hiring process, first and foremost, coaches need to have their CSCS, right? If they don't have that through the NSCA, they can't then become RSCC, which you need to be at the AA level and higher. So for us, that just shows professional growth potential. We look for great humans, good coaches, great teammates, and people who are enthusiastic about players and their careers. The tactical, technical, technology stuff, that can come with time. And I may be biased towards that, just being a former D3 guy. Our technology was a stopwatch. And so with technology continuing to evolve, it seems like year after year, that's something that we can all learn over time. But are you a good person, good teammate, good coach, and are you passionate about our players?
Yeah, I can remember, like, we had a hand-me-down Tendo unit, and we thought it was like the craziest thing. And now, like, everybody and their brother has velocity-based training at their belt. And we were just breaking it out like, a caveman discovering fire or something. We're like, what is this thing? Like, and then we're looking into like Louis and like learning from back when he first started. But yeah, I to be honest, man, I have to agree with you so much here. Like, all the tech and all of that stuff, it seems like a lot of the younger generation now wants to learn that first and have the communication and the soft skills be second. And like we were talking about earlier, you put those people out in front of a group for a dynamic warm up, and especially on some of the older fields, and they can just smell the insecurity on them. And they're like, all right, we're going to make this tough for them today. And to be honest, like, they should, right? Like, that's how you learn. And
absolutely should.
And so for me, that's a lesson that I've tried to instill with our interns here, and being the intern coordinator now, it's something that I really want to make sure I address, is like, you have to be comfortable in front of people, and you have to be a good person. You have to be able to speak well. You can't get rattled when something goes wrong. And those kind of skills will stick over time, and the technology is just going to evolve. And as long as you stay, up to par, up to speed with that stuff, you're going to be okay. But those soft skills are what are going to take you above and beyond, because eventually, if you can't talk to people, you're going to be either stuck behind a computer, you're going to be pushed out. But it's not going to be coaching, right? Like, coaching at the heart of what we do is connecting and interacting with people, creating relationships on a daily basis. And if you can't do that, like I find it hard to believe that you'll be a really quality coach.
And there's nothing wrong with those other positions, right? It's all support for the
100%,
player.
100%.
But for a strength conditioning coach, it's in the job title. Your primary responsibility is to coach the player. And so how do you communicate with the player? How do you watch how they move? How do you evaluate and how do you execute the program that you put forth for them? But then how do you create that buy-in as well?
Yeah, I want to make that clear. I'm not trying to belittle any other
No,
position.
yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Like, I don't want that to get construed the wrong way. I know people that have been coaches and got on a deep dive into the data side and became like data analysts and like directors of sports science and things like that. And that's their passion and that's fine. And it's made them great livings. Like, kudos to them, man. Like, you have to figure out what really works for you. But yeah, like I said, if you want to be a coach and you want to be a really effective coach, like, you have to know how to communicate with people. You have to know how to be in front of a big group. You have to know the tone of your voice. You have to know the spatial awareness, like we were talking about earlier. Like, all of those things just play into how effectively you can get people to follow your lead. And eventually, if you can get them to follow you, they'll do the things that you want them to do, even when things get tough.
Yes.
How about continuing education resources, books that you'd recommend, podcasts you listen to, seminars you attend in the now non-existent free time in your life? Like, where do you go to stay on top of things for yourself?
This is an area we're passionate about because staff development is player development. If our staff are continuing to get better, then ultimately our players are going to get better too, right? I came up going to the NSCA Coaches Conference, which is every January. It flows through different cities in the U.S. To me, that's the best conference to go to because there's high school, private, JUCO, professional, D1 is a big mix of different strength coaches throughout the country. And typically everyone's very comfortable sitting down and talking shop. I think the presentations are great, but really, especially for us in baseball, we have the winter meetings in December, and then that's kind of the major conference that we can go to during the year. Oftentimes, there's a lot of baseball strength coaches there, and that it's a very relaxed environment for all of us to get together and really just talk shop and bounce ideas off each other.
Yeah, that's really awesome. How about any books or podcasts that you recommend, either from yourself or, for your staff when they come in? Do you have like a reading or an education list for them? Like, what other things are you recommending to people?
Yeah, from a book standpoint, I really like The Intent is to Grow. Jesse Wright, former, I want to say 76ers NBA strength coach. Um, from a core standpoint, one that I took a couple years ago that I liked and recommend is Ramsey Nijim's applied performance coach. He's the Kansas men's basketball strength coach. He does a really good job of breaking stuff down for green coaches, veteran coaches, and he builds a great community and is always evolving for people to learn and grow from each other. From a podcast, I listen to this. This is probably the primary podcast that I listen to.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate the support over the years, man. It's been awesome. And just also to follow your own journey. So I know that you've had a very typical minor league traveling schedule and you're probably exhausted. I want to do a lightning round and then I will get you out of here if you're cool with that.
For sure.
Okay, 4 questions, answer as long or as short as you'd like. First one, who is your biggest influence in the field of strength and conditioning?
So it's different. Chris Hartman, my strength coach in college, he got me started. So obviously a big influence. My baseball coach in college, Jason Verdugo, just instilling the work ethic. But then Carmen Pata in Wisconsin for continuing to challenge me to really push the envelope and think differently about athletic development.
If you had one piece of equipment to train with, what would it be?
The barbell. You can squat, you can push, you can hinge, you can pull, you can rotate, you can carry, you can do everything you want with it. Get a barbell.
Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
The fact that I'm even here is the biggest accomplishment. The real one's my wife and my twin boy and girl, Morgan and Reagan. But yeah, the fact that I'm even here, it's pretty cool.
Any career other than strength and conditioning, what would you choose?
I watched House MD as a kid growing up, and so I wanted to do whatever he was doing, where it was working with one patient and solving the puzzle of the most wild sort of medical cases you could.
Andy, I appreciate your time, man. I'm glad that we were finally able to link this up. If the listeners want to get in touch with you, where is the best place? Is it social media or is there a better place?
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me. Social media is Coach AK15 on Instagram and Twitter. I have a LinkedIn. Yeah, those are probably the best spots to reach me at.
I appreciate it again, man. I appreciate your support and friendship over the years. Now that I'm out in Arizona full time, I look forward to coming to the facility and, maybe coming over and just getting some dinner and just talking some shop and, keeping this thing going, man. It's really exciting to see what you guys got going on over there. And we'll talk soon. All right.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that's going to conclude part 2 of this 2-part interview with Andy. I hope you enjoyed this one. I thought it was a good look into what is expected of a minor league strength and conditioning coordinator. If you want to see specifically what the Giants are doing and what Andy is doing with his staff and his players in the minor leagues, make sure to check out part 1, as there's a link to the video from their camp in San Francisco. 3 things that I took from Andy in this part of the episode. Hands-on coaching will help you to become a better coach faster than any book you read. Being a good person, teammate, and coach makes you incredibly valuable as a new hire. And the more you can develop yourself, the more you can provide for your athletes. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.